All
All good.
right. Welcome, everybody, and a happy new year to all. Konbanwa in Japanese. So, of course, that's magandang gabi, good evening to all, and thank you for joining us last year. And today, this is our third event in our Inspiring Leadership series, and we will hold these events for our community every third Monday of the month. And so today is the 20th of January. Grabe, it's such a fast time. I didn't really expect that, right? It's almost February. But in these sessions, we are going to get together, get more inspired. We can ask questions to our speaker and, you know, fill our leadership cup on a regular basis. And so I believe that we can't really give what we don't have. And so thank you for allowing yourselves to learn and to get inspired in these moments with PLC. And so our agenda for tonight, our speaker, who's at the moment in Melbourne right now, we're really appreciative of his time and his energy that he will be bringing in for tonight. He will give us his precious 30-minute talk, and then afterwards we will have a 15 minutes of Q&A with him. And then we will be wrapping up with some great raffle prizes. Yay! Ayan. So for some of you who've already won before, who knows, you might win again. So make sure to type in your name and email address as well. Thank you, Sean, for putting up our raffle draw. And later on, Vicky will be the one to officially um, preside this. And yeah, also, FYI, this is exclusive for PH attendees only. So that's basically for location purposes, right? And we want to give your prices as soon as possible. That's why. And so while you are filling that up, we would love this to be interactive. We encourage you to use the chat box. Of course, you can't turn on your cameras maybe next time, but please type away your questions, your insights, or anything that you have in mind. And let's now test it out with the heart button or a thumbs up if you can. I'm putting a heart and would love to also check if you can also use the react buttons. Yay! Thank you so much, Vicky. But for the rest of us, hoping that you can also utilize our chat box and react buttons. All right. And yeah, I think our speaker is ready to get started. Let me introduce him to you. His name is Nick Kemp. So Nick is a father, a husband, and he is an Ikigai researcher, a solopreneur, and an author of Ikigai-KAN, Feel a Life of Worth Living. You know, this is so interesting because I myself, as a professional coach, use Ikigai so much, but tonight Nick will be taking us on a different perspective about Ikigai, and I'm really excited about that. He is the founder and the head coach of Ikigai Tribe, and he travels a lot to Japan due to his wife being Japanese. And, he runs a small community of educators, psychologists, coaches, and trainers who serve their personal communities using this concept of Ikigai. And tonight's topic would be discover authentic Ikigai, align passion with purpose. So let's give a hand to Nick and let's give him a warm welcome for taking his turn at PLC for tonight. Over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much, Grace, for that introduction. And thank you to Sean and Vicky for reaching out to me and having me as a guest. I have a connection to the Philippines. I have two VAs there, and they're really important to my business and to me. And about 2 years ago, or less than 2 years ago, I did go to the Philippines to meet them, and I climbed Mount Pinatubo. So that was fun. And I went to Palawan, but I was actually, unfortunately, I was actually sick through most of the holiday. So I will have to go back and not be sick, and enjoy eating and drinking and catching up with old friends and new friends. So thank you very much for having me. So I will now switch to screen and we'll get started. Might be useful to ask, does anyone know or has anyone heard of the Ikigai concept? Just put that in the chat. Yes, no. Okay, so a few people saying yes, yes, love Ikigai. Okay, well, this might be interesting, and I'll just share this with you now too. This is something you can maybe download and print out later after today's session. Okay, so let's get started. Oh, yeah, let's get started. So that is me in Tokyo in 1977. And I don't have many memories of that trip. I just remember a wonderful babysitter who looked after me and my brother at a hotel. My father was a physicist and he was invited to share his research in Japan. I think we spent about 5 days there. But I think this trip left a lasting impression. I went back in 1995 as a trainee chef, and that was a whole year, and that was quite an experience, life-changing. Started learning Japanese, started understanding the culture, and realized I shared an affinity with the Japanese people, and yeah, really loved the place. So that encouraged me to go back in 1998 and to teach English. And eventually I established my own small school in a town where my wife was from or is from. And I even started my own business, I guess my own online business, which was this language product. So I had many firsts in Japan, and I think I found my entrepreneurial spirit there, among other things. So yeah, Japan's my second home. I have many friends there, and I love the culture and the people. And through this journey, I eventually established Ikigai Tribe, and yeah, that's the work I do, sharing Ikigai from a Japanese perspective. I do that with a course, with a coach certification, and with more recently retreats. Okay, enough about it. Ikigai. I mean, enough about me. Let's dive into Ikigai. So this might shock some of you. Has anyone seen this Venn diagram, or does anyone use it? Okay, Chris has seen it. Sean. Yeah, so a few people. Okay, cool. So you might be familiar with this, and yeah, it's quite a helpful tool. I think it's also quite seductive. But this is not Ikigai. This is a Western interpretation or Western appropriation. So this is not Japanese in origin, and it really contradicts what Ikigai is for most people in Japan. This all came about from someone who was inspired by what essentially was the purpose Venn diagram. There have been many iterations of this Venn diagram, but this particular one, which is called proposito, meaning purpose, was the one someone merged with Ikigai after watching a TED talk. Um, and he did this Don't know why he did this, but he watched this TED talk on the blue zones. So the blue zones, some of you might know the blue zones. There are 5 locations in the world where they have a very high concentration of centenarians, and one of those places is Ikigai, not Ikigai, Okinawa. And Dan Buettner, who's a National Geographic fellow and author, he presented these 5 blue zones, mentioning that, oh, in Okinawa, they have this amazing lifestyle and they grow their own vegetables, they have strong social ties, and they have this word ikigai that imbues, you know, what life means to them, and it gives them a reason to get out of bed in the morning. And so from the TED Talk, uh, Ikigai became quite romanticized as the secret to longevity and the secret to happiness. And then this man, Mark Wynn, who I interviewed, merged the 2 concepts to create Ikigai. And for him, it was just an idea. It took him less than 30 minutes, and he had no idea this would go viral and impact so many people. So it's interesting because the Venn diagram is helpful, I think. A lot of people use it as a coaching tool, but this is not what Ikigai means to Japanese. And to quote Mark, in 2014, I wrote a blog post on the subject of Ikigai. In that blog post, I merged 2 concepts to create something new. Essentially, I merged a Venn diagram on purpose with Dan Buettner's Ikigai concept in relation to living to be more than 100. The sum total of my effort was that I changed 1 word on a diagram and shared a new meme with the world. Mark Wynn. So yeah, it's quite fascinating. He even refers to Ikigai as Dan Buettner's Ikigai concept. So that's gives you an indication of how much he really knew Ikigai, which is basically nothing at all. Mark's a fun guy. I've interviewed him, and he's been quite upfront about that. Yeah, so I guess a question I can ask now is, are you surprised? Are you shocked? Did you think Ikigai was this Venn diagram? There we go. Hmm. Okay, so most people probably thought this was Ikigai, and I think we all understand why it's seductive and it has this viral nature. When you see it, you do want to share it with other people. So Ikigai is not a sweet spot of a Venn diagram. It's not your bliss, and it's not the pursuit of one life purpose. So what is Ikigai? Well, Ikigai involves all these elements: your value system, hope, life satisfaction, change and growth, positive aging, a bright future, resilience, small joys, authenticity, belonging. And within Ikigai, there are even sub-theories where they use Japanese words. So one is yutori, which is this idea of space, where you have essentially enough mental space or even spiritual space where you can find essentially it's the space to have peace of mind, and you have the room to consider your life, consider others, and take time to reflect. And I think most people in today's world with social media and the internet really struggle with this. We're always being triggered or prompted. And so Yutori, like Ikigai, has become a psychological concept. So Ikigai is now studied as a psychological concept. And if you were to go to ResearchGate or other academic websites, you'd find many papers on Ikigai. And then we have Ibasho, which is the social aspect of Ikigai. So within Ikigai, there are all these other terms, and they're very much related to positive psychology. So if you wanted to encapsulate positive psychology in one word, Ikigai would be a very good word for that. Let's have a look at a few quotes. As Ikigai can be a guideline for the individual's way of life, it is a topic for interdisciplinary research in psychology, pedagogy, and philosophy. So, yeah, it's multifaceted. It has these elements of psychology, philosophy. It's something you could apply to education, and it's definitely something you could apply to coaching and also to leadership. And Professor Akihiro Hasegawa was actually my first podcast guest, and I wanted to take I guess an academic or an evidence-based approach. And originally, my podcast was just a passion project because I felt this sense of frustration that Ikigai's misunderstood, it's misrepresented. It was a word I was introduced to by Japanese when I was living in Japan. So I wanted to, I guess, you know, offer a Japanese perspective, and I did that with the podcast. Another quote, the feeling of Ikigai among younger people is accompanied by passion, whereas among the elderly, it tends to be an internal calm and continuous experience. And that's by Akenori Takeda, who's a researcher on Ikigai. And this makes sense. I think when we're younger, we have the future, we have many years ahead of us, we have this ambition, desire to create, start a business, do all these things. So we have this passion. And then I guess once we become elderly, we're limited in what we can do physically. And so perhaps we become more reflective, and Ikigai becomes this more internal calm and continuous experience where we also have this life wisdom to understand Ikigai is not just the pursuit of ambitious things or just having passion. It's this internal calm and continuous experience. So even among Japanese researchers or Japanese in general, Ikigai can mean different things. So it's very subjective and very personal. So today I'd like to introduce you to someone I like to call the mother of Ikigai. Her name is Mieko Kamiya, first name Mieko, surname Kamiya. And she wrote this book called Ikigai ni Tsuite in 1966. It was published. And ni tsuite just means about or regarding. And we could consider this book as almost like the Ikigai Bible. That's what Professor Hasegawa refers to it as. So it's a seminal work, and it's still referenced by researchers and scholars today. But yeah, no one knows about her. And I think if we talk about psychology or philosophy, we often hear the term, the fathers of, or the founding fathers of, or, the founding fathers of positive psychology. I don't think I've ever heard or read a line that says the mother of philosophy or the mother of positive psychology. But Mieko Kamiya was definitely one of the first researchers. She was a pioneer in this field. So I think it's appropriate we look at her work instead of a Western Venn diagram. So here we go. Mieko Kamiya's definition of Ikigai would be something along the lines of having life satisfaction where you feel your life is moving towards a better future. And I'm kind of contradicting myself because I don't like to offer definitions because it will sort of limit our learning or perspective on the subject. But where the West is very fascinated or fixated on happiness, Ikigai is more about life satisfaction. And Ikigai is also very much tied to your perception of the future and whether or not you think you are moving towards a better future. And even if you're struggling with life now, if you have goals or if you have things to look forward to, you can still feel a sense of Ikigai even when you're struggling with life. Let's take a look at a quote from her book and how she defines Ikigai. There are two ways of using the word ikigai. When someone says this child is my ikigai, it refers to the source or target of ikigai. And when one feels ikigai as a state of mind, Ikigai-KAN. Now, I should mention the word mind is from the word kokoro. And in Japanese, kokoro actually means mind, spirit, and heart as one entity. So it's not just a cognitive thing, it's also what you feel. In fact, Ikigai is more about your feelings and your emotions. And this is why I titled my book Ikigai-KAN, because I wanted to sort of have this emphasis that it's what you feel that matters. Ikigai is feeling that your life is worth living. So an example or a visual representation of what she's just said is if I think of my son as an Ikigai source, what I feel is obviously love for him, joy when I'm near him most of the time. I have a sense of purpose as a father. I have hope for his future. He is a music producer. He's working with other university students and they've just been funded and they're actually making a computer game. So he's making music for a computer game. And I'm like amazed, like, wow, you're not even out of um, uni and you're doing what you want to do. So that's amazing. There's connection. We have this very playful, almost brotherly relationship. And of course, I'm very proud of who he is. So if he's my Ikigai source, which he is, these are the Ikigai-KAN feelings or emotions I experience. And of course, they're life affirming. They make my life feel worth living. So maybe we can touch base. And now we've reframed Ikigai as things in your life. So that can be relationships, hobbies, your work, goals, dreams, even memories, pets, traveling. It's really endless. So, does anyone think they could type in an Ikigai source, something that quickly comes to mind that you feel makes your life worth living? Family. Yeah. Faith. Family. Family's an interesting one because it's also ties to role. So as I said before, I have a role as a father, so a role of a parent. And yeah, as a parent, you have a sense of purpose. You feel needed. Uh, you're nurturing someone. Hopefully you're guiding them and hopefully they're living a life full of ikigai. Um, Faith too, your connection to God or Buddha or whoever it is. It can be quite intimate, guides you to live a life. So it's very subjective and personal. But yeah, family. There is one researcher, Gordon Matthews, who interviewed 104 people on this subject. So he lived in Japan and he spent about 10 hours interviewing each individual, 52 Japanese and 52 Americans. And basically, he said it was kind of love or work, family or work would often come up. And so I'm sure for some of you, it might also be work and leadership and your role as a leader. Okay, so let's dive deeper now into the Ikigai needs, the 8 Ikigai needs. And to give you some perspective of Camia's work, she actually spent time with lepers who were ostracized from mainland Japan and sent off to various islands. And so lepers, obviously, with this debilitating disease, disfiguring disease, and then being ostracized from Japanese society, being intentionally cut from family. So families would reject their children if they had leprosy. And so she was dealing with people who had almost no reason to live. They were ostracized, put on this one particular island where she worked at, and she spent quite a number of years studying them, interviewing them, and also seeking that they would receive better treatment. And her work with them basically resulted in her model of Ikigai. Um, so she spent a lot of time talking with lepers, interviewing them, and found out that most of them suffered from a lack of significance. They felt they had nothing to offer. They felt they did not feel needed. However, there would be a handful of lepers who felt Ikigai. And one example was a man who was blind. He had no fingers, but he started to learn the harmonica, and it gave him this incredible sense of freedom, this opportunity to be creative. And he was so passionate about learning harmonica, he would use Braille to read music, and he could only read it with his lips and tongue. And he would be spending so much time reading Braille that his lips and tongue would bleed. And so him learning the harmonica was this strong source of Ikigai for him. It made his life worth living. So that's, yeah, quite a fascinating story. So through her work with lepers and other research, Camia basically discovered these needs. And in her book, she writes this question: how can one find Ikigai in a world of suffering and death, knowing that money, fame, and attachments all must vanish? And so, with this type of question or this type of mindset or approach, you can see the depth and breadth of Ikigai. And yeah, she really was a fascinating researcher and woman. And she believed you could find Ikigai in this world of suffering and death by satisfying your Ikigai needs. So, how can we experience Ikigai-KAN? Kami's research revealed that Ikigai-KAN, this feeling of Ikigai, occurs after the satisfaction of seven distinct needs, along with having a sense of purpose. So, to articulate these needs, I created this flower. I call it the Kamiya flower in recognition of her work, and that's it in Japanese. And so we'll go through each of these needs briefly so you can, yeah, gain an understanding of the spectrum of Ikigai. So the first need is life satisfaction, and Kamiya would state that this is the most fundamental need. This relates to your daily living and includes obviously things like small joys, how you interact with others, um, the things in daily living that give you perhaps a sense of purpose, where you feel needed. So it's always life satisfaction over happiness when we're talking about Ikigai. So that's the fundamental need. And I think life satisfaction is something we can always attain. There's always something we can be grateful for or find satisfying, whether it's morning cup of coffee, exercising, talking to a friend, um, embracing someone, spending time with your pet, doing meaningful work, and so on. Then we have change and growth. So this is actually tied to life satisfaction. So when we change and grow, it's obviously fulfilling. And so this involves, obviously learning new things, taking on challenges, stepping outside your comfort zone. Then we have a bright future, which really is a key component. And so in order to feel Ikigai, we really must feel our life is moving towards a bright future. And that can include short-term goals, long-term ambitions, or even just things you have to look forward to. So if you want to feel more Ikigai in your life, you could just plan to do more things that you simply enjoy. Then we have resonance. And yeah, this one was interesting. The Japanese word for this, um, actually, I'll put it up here. Initially had me confused. So it's hankyo and would mean echo or reverberation, response, reaction. But this is in the context of your social world. So it's really about social affiliation. It's your relationships with others and your relationship with the greater world. So this would include things like connection, intimacy, so emotional, intellectual, spiritual, creative intimacy, and the feeling that you are needed. And to satisfy this need, Cami would talk about having at least one significant other in your life and being accepted by the people who define you. So family, friends, work colleagues, mentors, and so on. Then we have freedom. And she says, what is freedom? And she says it's very easy to understand freedom if you think of it as sense of freedom. And she offers this example, like if you climb a mountain and you reach the top of the mountain, you even have this tendency to outstretch your arms to feel a sense of freedom. But then she talks about how a lot of people run away from freedom in the context of choice. And she offers two interesting examples. So, one is you might put aside freedom in the moment for a better freedom in the future. So, we could relate that to delayed gratification. Or you might even put aside your personal freedom for the freedom of someone else. And if there are any parents on the call, you've probably done that a lot. And so she has this interesting idea that if you make these choices of freedom where you're essentially inconveniencing yourself, these choices are actually an expression of freedom in and of themselves. So it's very different to like a Western idea of freedom where it's like, oh, doing what I want, whenever I want with who I want. So it's a far deeper level of freedom, not just involving what you want, but what others want, and also considering your future. Then we have self-actualization. And again, this is very different to, I guess, the Western idea of be the best version of yourself. She talks about self-actualization as using your unique imagination to create something new, and that all of us have something to offer if we use our unique imagination to create something. And for her specifically, it was writing, and writing her first book, which was Ikigai Nitsute, was an example of this. And it gave a great satisfaction that she could write this book. She was a physicist, a professor, a linguist. She tutored the royal family. She has like the most incredible CV. And, we have to put this in the context of a woman in Japan, like in the 50s and 60s. Yet she wasn't satisfied. Despite all her success, she really wanted to get her unique imagination, her unique thoughts on Ikigai out and write about it. And she did that by self-actualizing, by giving expression to her ideas, her life experience, and what she thought. So that's a really interesting take on self-actualization, which I really love, and I believe it's true that we really self-actualize when we express our unique imagination and offer something new to others or to the world. Then we have meaning and value, and this is where it gets interesting. So the need to feel meaning and value by reflecting upon the meaning of one's life and justifying its value. And she has 4 questions in her book that I would say are contemplation questions. You don't really need the answers, but maybe to some degree, some of you have thought about these questions or similar ones. So, is life worth living? Is one. What am I living for? Or by whom am I needed? What is a life goal unique to me? Am I doing my best to achieve it? And this one is perhaps the most interesting and profound. In relation to the previous 2 questions and other factors, do I deserve to exist? And so these are direct translations, and they were done by, not by me, by a Japanese researcher. So they're accurate. And so to share with you guys, I've always tried to pursue, I think, a goal like that would be unique to me. And I've tried so many things in my life, all these different businesses and whatnot. And when I pursued them, yeah, I did try to do my best. So that question really resonated with me. The 4th question gets a lot of different reactions. Some people find it quite uncomfortable, and some people who are often religious find it very easy. Like, oh, of course I deserve to exist. God put me here. Um, what's important is I think you reflect on these questions openly, spend time with them, and not look for answers. Just reflect on them and see what you start thinking about. And they might give you an idea of the meaning and value you feel. And then finally, we have a sense of purpose. And so in her book, she actually listed 7 needs. So everything we've looked at, life satisfaction, change and growth, a bright future, resonance, freedom, self-actualization, meaning and value. And she specifically labeled them as needs, but she didn't for a sense of purpose. And if she were alive today, I'd I'd want to ask her many questions, but I think I'd ask her like, oh, why didn't you define a sense of purpose as an ikigai need? Because you know you wrote on it quite significantly in your book. So she spends a lot of time talking about a sense of purpose in her book. And a quote on that, or the word for that, is Shimei-kan, having a sense of purpose. So again, kan is feeling or sense, and shimei is purpose. And if you look at the kanji for shimei, what's really interesting is it basically breaks down what purpose is. So this kanji, shimei, can also be used as a verb to mean use. And this kanji can also be read as inochi, usually meaning life. So in Japanese, shimei basically means use life. Like, how are you using your life? How are you going to use the life that has been given to you? And that's what Miko Kami often asks in her book. A quote on this from her book: a person who is most likely to feel a sense of ikigai the most is one who is convinced of his or her need to live, is clearly aware of his or her own self-survival goal, and is fully committed to that goal. In other words, a person who has a personal mission in their life that they are proactively pursuing will experience ikigai at the highest level. And so this might be the answer as to why she didn't see it as a need. Maybe it was more like the icing on the cake. Like, you can have these other needs, and if you satisfy most of them, which is what she said, you didn't need to satisfy all of them, but if you satisfied most of these needs, you're likely to feel ikigai. But if you have this sense of purpose, where you have a personal mission, where you almost feel it's unique to you, you'll feel ikigai at the highest level as you pursue that personal mission. And so this all relates to, or all results, I guess, in Ikigai-KAN, the feeling that life is worth living. And as you can see, it's very much all of these facets or aspects of positive psychology. So she was basically 35 years ahead of the positive psychology movement, yet no one knows anything about her. Okay, so how can we apply this in our life? So you could think about, how can I satisfy these needs? So I'll offer some examples. So for me, life satisfaction involves music. I love listening to music. I love playing music. I've recently purchased a Japanese flute, a shakuhachi, so I can learn that. So every day I'm listening to music. It motivates me, and I love to learn and play music. For change and growth, New Year's resolution, I'm actually doing a lot of cardio. I'm doing Zumba classes, combat classes, to lose weight. And it's really given my knees a wake-up call. So that's how I want to change and grow. I want to be more mobile, more flexible. Travel is where my bright future is. So I'd love to obviously go back to Japan and do more retreats. I'd love to go back to the Philippines again and see my VAs and maybe meet some of you guys. So I always want to be traveling. I think at the moment, for residents and how I satisfy this is with a focus on my son. He's now 20, he'll be 21 soon, and perhaps in a few years, he'll be on his way. So I'm very aware that our time together in the one house is limited, and I want to make the most of that time. To feel a sense of freedom, I'll just go for a walk, and I'll leave my phone and just go for a walk and just observe nature, um, spend a few minutes with myself, thinking about things other than work or things I need to do. And I guess self-actualization has come from, researching Ikigai. So I'm always looking for new papers, new podcast guests, any relatable theories, to learn more, to become closer to the person I want to be. And then I add that to my programs, and obviously offer perspectives on Ikigai to my community, but also to a larger audience through my podcast. And I gain a lot of meaning and value from my tribe, Ikigai Tribe. I have a role. I've created this role, this community, and it's quite amazing when I think about it now. It's been about 4 years, and sometimes I think, wow, all I did is started a podcast, but it evolved into this community, and it's radically changed my life and gives me a lot of meaning and value. And yeah, coaching, consulting, doing things like this, facilitating gives me a sense of purpose, really because of the social factor, um, being part of community and offering what I would call the real, the real ikigai. So I almost feel I'm an unofficial ambassador for Japan and really respect the culture. So I want to really make sure people understand what Ikigai is, and if they're open to learning more, then we connect. So that's something you guys can do with the download. You can go through all this and think about all these elements of life satisfaction, change and growth, a bright future, resonance, freedom, meaning, self-actualization, meaning and value, and sense of purpose. I'd like to leave you with one question. What emotions and states do you want to feel? So it's not so much about what you want, it's what do you want to feel? So if you want to feel a sense of freedom, what do you need to do to feel that? If you want excitement, what do you need to do that? If you want more connection or intimacy, who do you need to spend time with? And another good point is Ikigai is also about the people in your life. So a good question might also be is, who is your Ikigai? Yeah, your children, your friends, your partners, and so on. 終わりました. Okay, I finished. So thank you everyone for spending time with me.
All right. Thank you so much.
And my pleasure. Should I just stop share?
Yeah, sure. We'll go ahead and proceed with our Q&A.
Cool.
All right. So, wow. I'm speechless. Thank you so much, Nick, for giving us such a profound, such an invaluable message. I believe this is a big message that you are trying to advocate and just to for us to open up our hearts into the truth. Yeah, and letting us see this new light and new lens in terms of the word ikigai. And we have a few questions that are lined up. The
Awesome.
first question would be coming from Vicky. And here goes the question. As someone who trains coaches and other professionals about this concept of Ikigai, what are some of the most common challenges that people face in their journey to find their Ikigai?
Mm. Well, I think one challenge is obviously letting go of the Venn diagram. You've got to let that go and realize Ikigai is very much related to intrinsic motivation. So it's not extrinsic, meaning it's not from money or success or status or things you buy. Ikigai is more about what feels right, what feels good. So that the crucial thing is probably people need to understand their value system. Yeah. So they need to know what their values are. And if they do, then they know whether or not they're living aligned to their values or they're compromising your values. A really good example of that is a job. Like if you go to a job and you don't like it and you feel like I'm useless here, I'm not using my skills, I'm not valued, it's going to be very hard for you to feel ikigai. So if you have this idea, oh, ikigai is a quick fix, it's going to change my life, all I have to know is what it is. If it's one thing, that'll be great. But that's not ikigai. Ikigai involves so many aspects of your life. It's very holistic. So we need to let go of this idea. It's one thing that will save us. That's not Ikigai. It's about your whole life, your relationships, your work, your hobbies, your health. I mean, it's so subjective that for some Japanese, drinking beer or smoking cigarettes can be one source of Ikigai because it helps them get through the week. I'm sure Sean would agree. If we had a beer together, that first sip of beer would be life affirming, and then we'd probably get into a great conversation.
I'm sure we would.
Yeah. So that's my point. Let go of this idea. It's one special thing that will save you.
Yeah. Yeah. I was
Mm.
actually supposed to answer that question. How do you now do it for you to be able to truly grasp the concept and let go of the old one? I, for one, am guilty of using the old one, trying to coach other people with the Ikigai concept of a
Mm.
westernized version. But listening to you for just a couple of minutes, the way you embody that is really, rather than it's something that you have to chase, the new concept as I understand it, and I would like to ask your clarification as well if that's correct. The new ikigai that I am understanding is the art of sort of becoming, because it's who you are. And
Mm.
I love how you said it. It's not satisfying the materialistic world, and therefore it becomes intrinsic rather than you becoming for the world, but it's really you becoming for your own existence.
Yeah, we use this. I mean, that's correct. So we use this term find your Ikigai, but it's really uncovering your Ikigai because it's in you. If you spend enough time reflecting on, oh, what does matter to me? What do I want to feel? Who do I care about? What do I believe in? Who do I want to become? Like we have all these roles, so your role can be a source of Ikigai. So we have multiple Ikigai. And there's also this irony too that most Japanese don't even think about Ikigai. Most Japanese, because they have hundreds of these kind of special or unique words in Japanese, and Ikigai is one of them. However, what's unique to Ikigai, it is a concept of psychological and philosophical research, and it's become Japan's measure of well-being. So if we relate it to positive psychology, yeah, it's all about using your strengths to be the person you want to be. It's becoming, I wouldn't say it's becoming the best version of yourself. I'd say it's becoming the most authentic version of yourself. Yeah. Mm.
Nick. I think we have a few questions in line, but Sean, would you like to go?
Yeah, thank you. Um, like tons and tons of questions, and I really hope that the people that are in the raffle who win the copy of your book, that they are going to be super happy because it has to start with there's so much more to learn about the stuff that isn't understood truly about
Mm.
Ikigai, right? So step one is Nick has a ton of podcasts on his channel that you can listen to. He's got an awesome website and of course the book. So if you get that, that's a good start. But Nick, my question is, let's assume that everyone does that, so they now grasp the broader concept of Ikigai. How do you personally keep yourself centered and aligned regularly to Ikigai to make sure that the outside forces of just regular life don't kind of wash you away from that authentic journey that you're on? How do you stay grounded in Ikigai on a kind of a daily, weekly basis?
Well, for me, my Ikigai is very much tied to people and role. And so a good example of that is like making new friends. And most of my work, I'm really lucky, involves people. So like we'll probably become friends or acquaintances through this. And so for me, that's great. I've got this new connection. I've offered something, sense of contribution. And so when I am feeling the pressures of life, I'm about to burn out or I have some stress, I cope because Ikigai can be a coping mechanism. I cope by reaching out to friends or my brother. I'll catch up with my brother and we'll go and have coffee in the morning or dinner and maybe I'll talk about my problems, maybe I won't. But just seeing him is like, ah, I feel good around my brother. Um, so yeah, I think if you can almost see your Ikigai or some of your Ikigai sources as a coping mechanism. And so yeah, if you're stressed or struggling with life, you do something that makes you feel good. So it could be music, it could be could be a beer, could be playing with your pet. You just need to know what it is and then allow yourself to do that because often we don't. We think, oh, I'll just get this done, or we kind of deal with one problem after the other, thinking, oh, I'll just do this one, this one, this one. And before you know it, you're burning out or you're stressed or you're not yourself. Yeah. You've kind of sacrificed your authenticity to getting something done or pushed yourself too hard. So you really need to think what's kind of my core ikigai and try and align to that as much as possible, or see some other ikigai as these coping mechanisms that can remind you to say, oh, hang on, you're overdoing it here. You're letting the external control you. Mm.
Yeah, good. And actually, maybe I was just thinking for people that in the chat discussion, there's the PDF to the Kamaya flower, and maybe a good step for people is to print that out, right, and go back and listen to this session at another time, fill out the petals on that flower for you, print it out and put it up on your wall. And just, I mean, in the beginning, right, it's always about reflection and reminding, right? So every day, go back and just make sure that the decisions that you're taking in the day are true to your authentic ikigai until you get the discipline around it, right? To make sure that the friends that you pick are the right friends that match your ikigai, that the career decisions and the life choices make it are around that. And another great, I'm all for plugging what Nick does, right? So Nick has these really fantastic retreats in Japan, where you can actually fully immerse yourself in the whole experience. So I think, for people that are interested to learn more and to really understand how to integrate this, I think it's worth them, maybe finding ways to number one, get the book, and if you don't get it for free, buy it. It's on Amazon. And maybe listen out. We might do some more sessions with Nick as well. Grace, I'll let you take on some other questions now.
That's a great question. Thanks for asking that, Sean. And we do have a question from Chris, Nick. And
Sure.
I'm not sure if this is a question that you answered previously, but he was curious about why do you think that Miko, being the mother of Ikigai, made the philosophy revolve around satisfaction, right? And not about happiness or love, because most philosophies are underneath those concepts. But why do you think that it was purely based out of satisfaction?
Okay, well, it's not purely based on satisfaction. Satisfaction is one of these needs. If anything, it's probably more based on this idea of your life is moving forward. Um, so happiness, if we think about happiness, we place a lot of value on being happy and trying to be happy all the time. That is not possible. And Cami actually noted you can feel Ikigai very intensely or mostly intensely when you overcome some sort of existential crisis or extreme challenge because you uncover a part of yourself perhaps you didn't realize existed, or you overcome something challenging and painful yet meaningful to understand this aspect of life that you never understood before. So yeah, we all know happiness comes and goes. And I think happiness is best experienced when it's unexpected. Yeah, you bump into an old friend, or just something small happens to you that makes you feel happy. But if we're trying to be happy all the time, it's just unrealistic. Whereas we probably can be satisfied by something. Even on a hot day, just drinking a glass of water gives you that satisfaction. Probably not going to make you happy, but you'll be, well, maybe, but you'll be satisfied. Then resonance, that Ikigai need of resonance includes the idea of love. Yeah. So having a significant other, and she was very specific on that, being accepted by the people who define you and having a significant other. So it's certainly not the case that she's saying, oh, love's not important or happiness is not important. It's just that these were the needs she uncovered from her research. Her research also included people who were on death row. So she would write letters to people in Singapore who were on death row. She interviewed atomic bomb survivors, people who were suffering from terminal illnesses, and these needs came out. And yeah, that's my answer. I don't know what I'm saying, but yeah, that's the best of my ability. I can think to. Of course, she talks about happiness, but it's just not it's just not considered a need, and maybe that's also an aspect of Japanese culture too. Japanese are not fixated on happiness. They're more fixated on harmony and, to some detriment, fitting in and not causing trouble to others rather than personal happiness. Yeah.
I love that concept of unveiling, discovering.
So if I may add, Grace, it's I went through Nick's course, and 30 minutes of talking does not do justice to it, by the way. He has a full course on Ikigai, but maybe share just very deep insight, not very deep, very short insight. It is deeply personal, as you said. It's not really one grand life purpose or career success. It's, how do I say, it's joy, meaning, and fulfillment, and maybe emphasize that it's in everyday life. You just go through life. I remember, Nick, one of the favorite things I sort of heard in your podcast. What if it was easy?
Mm,
What
yeah,
what
yeah.
what would make life easy? It's the joy, the meaning, and the fulfillment, right? It's small, significant moments that
Mm.
that make life worth living. Again, it's a spectrum. It's a mix of life satisfaction, self-actualization, freedom, growth, and I truly love resonance, which is, do I mean anything to anyone? So yeah.
And
So
I love
I mean,
that.
I would like to point out, Ikigai can include the pursuit of life-defining goals.
yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So if you have a goal and you want to achieve it, that can be your Ikigai for sure. And then if we were to talk on leadership, we might actually use this word, which is kokorozashi, which basically means the mind or the heart of the samurai. And in today's world, it means a personal mission that will change society. So Japan has all these amazing words for concepts we understand. We just don't have cool special words for them.
Yeah.
That's nice. Actually, just it's good that you tied that back because uh, as a leadership team, right? I guess leaders, it's important for leaders to understand that part of the PLC's fundamental is to be an effective leader. You have to know yourself, right? You have to really understand and have a very strong grounding from which to lead from. And so that's why we selected Ikigai as a topic for this Inspiring Leadership series, because this is really getting down to the roots of who you are and what drives you to lead to that authentic self. And I really wanted to make sure that everyone understood the message behind that for this is that if you can spend some time understanding the real Ikigai concept and where it is for you, your authentic Ikigai. It's the first step in really becoming an effective leader. So I know we've got, I know it's 12:10 a.m. for you, Nick. So
This is my Ikigai, so it's all good.
it's almost time for breakfast. Grace, any last questions to wrap up before we move on?
Yeah, we do have one last question from Mike, and this is in relation to the Ikigai organization that we normally know. But how do you think, Nick, leaders can use this new concept, this new version of Ikigai to help their teammates or their peers to have a more holistic approach to their life and their career?
I'd probably frame it as it's almost like a program for employee well-being. Like if you care about your employees or your co-workers or, even your managers, this could be a model it's very holistic. It involves all these elements, change and growth. So we all want to change and grow. Growth is something really important. And so you would hope that, yeah, all your employees or all your staff or all the people you work with grow from their work. You'd hope they could use their unique imagination in their work and self-actualize and have something to offer. You'd hope they would have strong connections with their co-workers and staff and feel resonance. You would hope that they feel satisfied at work. Actually, Basho, that sub-theory of Ikigai, essentially has three facets to it. So Basho means place, right? Idu is the verb to mean exist. So Basho means a place where you exist, but in a psychological context, it is a place where you feel you belong, yeah? A place to be. And I believe every workplace should be a place where you feel you belong. And so it should include these three ideas. It's a safe place where you have a strong sense of purpose. You have reliable social relationships where everyone's approachable, and you have a belief in the future. Now, if you went to most companies and asked the owner or manager and said, hey, if I spoke to all your employees, how many people would say, yes, those three things exist in your company? I wonder how many people would say yes to all three of them. So probably, not that many. So that's how I think you could apply it. You can apply a whole thing in this context of employee well-being. I reckon there should be, how there are chief happiness officers in some companies? There should really be chief Ikigai officers. Could be, I actually got the domain, so I was thinking that could be another business. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nick, for that. We have one last question from Avina. She's asking if it's possible to circle back to that concept of Ikigai while juggling the more practical aspects in life, like financial stability, career goals. Yeah.
So what the question is, let me make sure I understand the question. So we've got, career goals, juggling life,
And I guess
how do we,
how do you balance and still integrate Ikigai amongst the practical realities?
have the perfect answer? This answer comes from a neuroscientist, Ken Moggy. Does anyone know Ken Moggy? Ken Moggy wrote a book on Ikigai, and Ken's been a podcast guest, and he's been very good to me and my community. Here's here's a five-pillar framework of Ikigai, and the first one, or probably the most helpful one, is start small. Yeah. So if your Ikigai is listening to your favorite song, listen to that favorite song. If your Ikigai is cuddling your cat and it's purring, do that for a few minutes. Yeah, you really got to start small. And you could integrate Ikigai. Like Ken Mogi talks about this idea of essentially Ikigai or some Ikigai is this release of dopamine, yeah? Because it involves, sometimes it involves sensory pleasure. So, you know, you could have this morning routine where you wake up, you get sunlight. Yeah, you have your coffee, you have a cold shower. He has a Kemogi every morning. He has coffee and a chocolate. That's one of his ikigai. Yeah. Um, I have coffee. I might have green tea. I'll cuddle my cats. I might play a little guitar. So you just integrate these small ikigais. Yes, small ikigais. Ken actually says he can easily identify 100 ikigai sources in his life. So it's also perhaps appreciating what you already have and maximizing that. Yeah. So we have so much to be grateful for, and we might miss it in the chaos of life, worrying about this and that. So start small, slow down, and yeah, think of Ikigai as a series of dopamine releasing activities. It is proactive, yeah. So you do need to do something. You do need to, listen to your music and focus on that, or make a coffee, or ring a friend. If you really want to, yeah, ring a friend is something you could do. Ring an old friend, check in with them, see how they are, and that'll make you feel Ikigai. So there's many things you could do. Just start small.
Ikigai is a choice.
I wish
Ikigai
we
choices.
have in a webinar right now, but it's never gonna stop. But thank you so much for your great questions, and I think we're ready for the raffle. Sean or Vicky?
Thank you, Nick. Before we go on, thank you, Nick. Well done. That was excellent.
Thank you guys for having me. A pleasure.
And great questions from the team as well.
Thank you so much, Nick. I have 3 books with me right now.
Okay,
Great.
let me
Given away.
get the wheel of names happening. Hang on.
While you're still getting the wheels up, I actually posted earlier in the chat, Ikigai Tribe's website. There's so many resources there, podcasts, as Sean mentioned. There's a complete course on Ikigai. And again, it expands everything that Nick has said in the last 30 minutes, but really, really deeply looking into it.
Yes,
So,
Nick, plug what's your URL for your website?
Oh, that's just IKIGAI-Tribe.com.
There you go.
So,
All right. Raffle Master.
no, press, click.
There you go.
this is fun.
There you go.
Rochelle,
Well done.
Rochelle, Austria.
Congrats, Rochelle.
Almost Australian. Almost.
Yeah, almost Australia.
All right. That's number 1. Number 2.
Nice.
Oh,
Ooh.
that was a line call.
Nanette.
Well done, Nanette. Well
Thank
done,
you.
Nanette. Nanette's lucky because she reached out and sent us her email address. So well done, Nanette. And lucky last. I know who's wishing. I know who's wishing for a book.
Grace Caga's chat.
Oh,
Who's not there?
oh. There you go.
Chris.
Congrats, Chris.
There we go. Rochelle,
right.
Nanette, and Chris. Well done. Congrats.
Congratulations,
Nice.
everyone. And thank you, Nick.
My pleasure, guys. Thank you for having me. It's always good to form new connections, and you never know where it's going to lead. So, yeah, appreciate being
Well-
a guest.
Oh, hope we can have you again.
Yes.
Anytime.
Thank you, Nick.
Wow. Hmm.
Over to you, Grace.
All right, thank you so much, and congrats to our winners. Sean or Vicky will reach out to you so that you can receive your book. I wish I have one, but hopefully next time I'll buy it. But thank you so much. This brings our session to a close for tonight. We hope that you have a great evening. Just an announcement, our next PLC or Philippine Leadership Collective event will be on Feb 17th. That's right after Valentine's Day. So make sure not to miss it. It's at the same time, 8 p.m. via Zoom. Let's invite our friends, family members, for as long as they're a member of PLC, at our Facebook group. Yeah, they can come in and learn with us. And of course, a big thank you for everyone, our participants for today. You guys are amazing. Thank you for your energy. We can feel you even though we can't see you. Thank you for your questions, and we hope that you've had fun. But again, super duper grateful for our speaker tonight. Nick, may God bless you even more. Thank you so much for all of the love that you've given us for tonight. And so,
Yeah.
muchas gracias, everyone. Nick,
じゃあね。
Thank you
じゃあ
again,
ね。
Nick.
ありがとうね。Thank you.
arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
See you
everyone.
soon.
Good
Bye.
night.